Hello, welcome to the Flute 360 podcast, where we incorporate a panoramic view of flute-related topics. I am your host, Heidi K. Begay, and this is episode 148, an interview with Amy Taylor. I have some exciting offers to share with you. Never could I imagine that Flute 360 would get to work with such fantastic companies, but here we are. I am thrilled to announce 3 exciting discounts from my flute friends. Please take advantage of Carolyn Nussbaum's 10% discount off of cleaning supplies from now until February 14th. Also, Flute Specialists is giving you a 20% discount off of sheet music from now until March 1st. Finally, Flutistry Boston is giving you a 20% discount off of the wonderful book Survival of the Flutist by Marian Gadigian and Patty Adams. Use your Flute 360 code today to set up your flute studio with the essentials. With your purchase, you are financially supporting the Flute 360 podcast. Thank you for your backup, and all the links are provided below in the show notes. Hi, Amy.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for carving out time for us. I know how busy you are.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to chat.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful to hear your voice again. I know we met briefly at the Texas Flute Society's festival a few years ago.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago.
Yeah, it feels like 5-10 years.
Yeah.
But it's only been like 2.
Yeah, exactly.
How's your year been?
You know, lots of ups and downs. I mean, I know it's a crazy time for everybody, so yeah. I'm just trying to go with the flow and take it day by day, I suppose.
Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, same thing. Totally same boat. Just riding the waves, figuring it out.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that you're doing this because I know that this year's been tough for a lot, like especially, students, and just the fact that you're doing this and connecting everyone and trying to keep the flute community sort of talking and part of things. I think it's really great.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been this wonderful whirlwind and I've learned a lot. And, as tragic as COVID is, there's always a silver lining. And one of those silver linings, for me at least, is building these relationships and getting to rekindle, connections like you. I met at the table, at the registration table. We said hi. You went off on your way. I went off on my way. And it's like, oh, yeah, that Amy chick, she was pretty cool. Maybe she'd like to be on the podcast and getting to get to know you better. It's amazing where this podcast has taken me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah. So congratulations on your teaching position at UNT. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yeah. I'm teaching piccolo classes.
Yeah.
So it's really great. I mean, it's an honor for me. I mean, it's my alma mater. So I was like really, really thrilled to be asked to do it. And I know there's so many colleges out there that are now starting to sort of, have more permanent piccolo faculty. And I think I hope I'm helping the students. So we have like a combination of like excerpt classes and warm-up classes. And then I teach a few like private piccolo lessons in addition. So covering all the bases.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I had thought that you had studied with Terry Sundberg. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Terry Sundberg is my flute hero. I really consider her my guardian angel. I don't know. I actually don't think I would be playing the flute if it wasn't for her. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, she's a pretty amazing person. So I feel very blessed to have had her as a teacher. And to be quite honest, like I was pretty rough when I came to North Texas in my undergrad. So I was pretty behind the ball for sure. And I'm really grateful to her that she sort of saw something and stuck with me even when I gave up on myself a few times. She was just like that person that, I don't know, she's just really amazing. So I feel really lucky that she was my teacher and my mentor for that time. So it's really cool, like full circle to be like, texting and calling and teaching alongside her. It's really, I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. So
yeah, I'm all about full circles.
yeah.
If I let my dorky Heidi self come out, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That sounds like Terry.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, she really brings her students, under her wings, and notices that potential and really nurtures those talents and gets you to a whole new level.
Right. For a long while, I'll say that I was really hesitant to teach because, I mean, before Professor Sundberg, like I studied with Claire Johnson and Helen Blackburn, and they were obviously also amazing. And I was so hesitant to teach for a long time because I felt like I had been so blessed and so lucky to have these really incredible people in my life. And I just felt like there's no way I could live up to that. And so I sort of shied away from teaching for a long time. And then I realized, you know what, like if I even give, a little tiny bit back that they gave to me, like I will have done something good. And I really love teaching. It's actually something that really fulfills me. So I'm really lucky to be able to do it. But also I feel like I'm taking them with me in every lesson,
Yeah, so true, right? Huh.
Yeah.
And I really thank you for being so vulnerable and saying this is something that you had shied away from at some point. That's interesting how, I don't know if it's the imposter syndrome, crept in for you, but it sounds like that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just spill my guts. I don't care. I do feel like I haven't been the most secure person for most of my life. So a lot of what I've had to deal with is really just me defeating myself. So, for the beginning of time, it was, even with piccolo, I was terrified to play piccolo for a long time. And it was actually Jennifer Gunn from the Chicago Symphony that even sort of opened that world to me because, well, just a side story. When I was in the Civic Orchestra, she was our coach. And there was a concert that I was assigned to piccolo and we had a sectional with her. And I remember being just like mortified that I was like playing piccolo in front of this amazing rock star and like, oh my gosh, what is she thinking? Oh no, and after that sectional, she, came to me and said, have you considered taking piccolo auditions? And I was like, why would I do that? I'm horrible at it, and so she worked with me and, helped me tremendously. And it was that boost of confidence that I needed. And the next audition I took, I won, and it was a piccolo audition, so it's, I would have never given myself that grace because I just, I'm hard on myself. I know a lot of us are, but I'm really hard on myself. And so sort of, again, talking about the teaching at UNT, I feel like I'm hopeful that I can sort of give the students that reassurance and just as a specialist in piccolo, helping them feel a little more comfortable on an instrument that, we don't get that much training on, to be honest. So, yeah. And for me, like what you're talking about, the imposter syndrome, like I've had to work a lot to really feel good with what I do. I mean, whether it be music or teaching, I try really hard. So I work really hard and I care a lot. So I think it's important for me to do a good job in everything I'm doing.
No, I love all of that. And I can resonate with you on so many different levels there. But what I loved, what you had said the most was this nugget of confidence, like being a great teacher where you can give even just a little bit, right, of that knowledge that your teachers gave you and you can pass it along, and how much more confident your student will be with that repertoire or how much more confident they will be going into that audition room. I think that is so crucial for us teachers to remember. And I love that because it is so true. The teachers that really have impacted me along my career, they made me feel like I could fly. I could do anything. And you can't put a price on that.
Right. Yeah. I do think that finding that teacher that not only that you get along with, because there is, tough love too, but just somebody that understands you and you understand them and that in their soul, they care about you and they want you to do well and they want you to succeed. And I feel like when you find that teacher that really supports you in that way, it's amazing. You really can do anything. And even now, I feel like I still, Professor Sundberg and I talk anyway, because I'm teaching with her, but I mean, I still update her on things, and she's the person that I, call after my mom, like when things go well. Cause I want, I feel like I owe her this big, huge debt of gratitude. And the same with Jennifer. After auditions, she was the first one I would text, because I just felt like they had been just tremendous impacts on my life and my path. So I wanted them to know how much they mean to me. So
yeah, no, I love that. Yeah. And they are like a second mom.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And I have to say, like, also on the teaching side of things too, like for my students, I have several students that I really feel a special bond with, and I love all my students, but it's like there are some that you relate to. And so, when I have a student come to me that is particularly insecure or self-doubting or, has some of the same issues that I struggled with, I know I can understand them and help them, maybe in a different way than another teacher might be able to. So, but I think that we all have that niche. We have that thing. Like if you worked for a long time on how to do your vibrato, then you're going to help your students with that a lot because you understand the mechanics, So for me, it's a lot of the mental challenges that go into being a musician, or, even if it's just in high school or college or full time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. And I'm getting goosebumps over here because, one of the reasons why I keep doing this podcast is because I love to make these connections in my mind. And the one connection that is so bright right now is because I just got off the phone with him is Nicola. And he just said the exact same thing. He said, his Mazzanti method book was based on him trying to figure out how to get that vibrant, beautiful piccolo tone for his playing. And then those exercises went into his students and the studio and then out for publication. I'm hearing the same thing from you and, Mr. Mazzanti here is if you had to work extra hard in X area, you can really relate it to Jane or Joe because you've been there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I just took you on this very quick roller coaster whirlwind of just diving into talking about, and I didn't even get to set up, camp and ask you about yourself and anything you want to share about your personal or, student or professional life. We just kind of dove right in.
I don't have a problem with that. So, my name's Amy Taylor. I play in the San Diego Symphony. I'm the piccolo player in the San Diego Symphony. Right now, although I'm in Cincinnati right now because my husband plays in the Cincinnati Symphony. And so for the quarantine and pandemic, I've basically been in Cincinnati. But I grew up in Allen, Texas, so just north of Dallas. Like we've discussed, I went to the University of North Texas, studied with Terry Sundberg. Then I did my master's degree with Wally Kujala at Northwestern. I played in the Civic Orchestra, and then my first job was in the Honolulu Symphony, and then I played in the Milwaukee Symphony, and then the Cincinnati Symphony, and then now I'm in San Diego. So just bopping all over the place.
But that makes life super fun.
I haven't had a problem. I love it. For me, it's also like I just want to keep finding ways to challenge myself. And I had been playing second flute in Cincinnati, but piccolo is really like my passion and my love. And so I had been sort of dying to play piccolo in an orchestra. And San Diego is a beautiful place. So I saw the audition and I was like, hey, that sounds great. So I went for that. And I hadn't taken an audition in, I think, like maybe 5 years. So it was quite scary, but it was good. And I know I'm doing the right thing because like piccolo is just really special. And I know Jeff Zook talks about this all the time, but like, are you a flute player? Are you piccolo player? What do you, and for a long time I was sort of everything, and freelancing and things like that. But I definitely consider myself, if someone asks, I say I'm a piccolo player. So I'm definitely in that camp now.
That is so cool. Yeah. Just to be able to say, this is my voice.
Yeah. And it's, to be honest, like I've never wanted to play principal. It's just not my thing. I love the music. I love sitting there and listening to a lovely Daphnis solo or an amazing Brahms 4, but I don't want to sit in that seat.
Yeah.
So, and I think also sometimes people just assume that you have to want to do that.
Yeah.
If you play the flute. And I just feel like at least in the orchestra, every seat has a specific personality. Every seat has a specific thing. I will say it's sort of weird because I really love playing second because the challenge is different. The challenge is like, how can I like read the mind of the person to my left and like do what they are going to do before they know they're going to do it, and I love playing like the inner harmonies, but I mean, piccolo is just one of those soaring voices that I don't know. There's just a specific sparkle and I don't know. It's for me.
No, you can tell even with the sparkle in your voice right now, explaining it, you can definitely tell that it's something you love.
Yeah, for sure.
Neat. No, so cool. So you mentioned your studies briefly with Kujala and Jennifer Gunn. I thought to kind of highlight your time with Jennifer just because she's another Flute 360 guest. So was there a specific I'm sure there were tons of highlights, but what was like the main nugget that you pulled out from Jennifer during that time with her?
Oh man, there's so many.
Yeah.
I will say I was lucky enough that I did a lot of subbing with the Chicago Symphony for a time there. And I got to sit to her left and I was sitting second for a lot of concerts. And specifically, I remember playing Shostakovich 6, playing second but I mean, amongst a lot of, big repertoire but she has some of the most amazing control of any piccolo player that I've ever heard. And there's just a beauty in the way that she plays and everything is sculpted with care. And so every lesson I had with her, every time I sat next to her, it was just, I just wanted to like soak it all in because I felt like even just listening to her and her sound and how pure everything was, I felt like I learned. But she's, again, talking about the control. I really tried to emulate her mastery of the soft dynamic because I think that that's something that if you can do as a piccolo player, if you can play softly well, it really shines. And I think it makes a huge difference. And so that's one thing that I really owe her because I think that I learned a lot of my subtle soft playing from her. Yeah. She's just a beautiful person and musician. And I just learned so much from listening to her, sitting next to her and hearing her. But again, it's also from a musical standpoint. She's just so expressive and everything is, I don't know. It's just, she's amazing. So
yeah. No, that's so cool. Deep down, I would love to sit down and like pick your brain on every teacher you've always you studied with because, why not? That would be amazing. But I also know I need to respect your time too. So I had to pick one of your many teachers.
Hello, this is Jim Keefe, and I make Keefe piccolos along with my good friend and business partner, Jan Kinmonth. Over the years, Jan and I have been fortunate to work with many great piccolo players and have developed a very good understanding of the challenges piccolo players face. One of the great insights we learned was from Lori Sokoloff, former principal piccolo of the Baltimore Symphony. Lori told us, the challenge in playing the piccolo is not getting out the high notes. The challenge is in making it sound like a musical instrument. So our job as makers is to offer piccolos that help players make this beautiful but challenging little instrument sound like it belongs in the orchestra. Our job is to offer piccolos that have a rich and dark tone quality, that blend beautifully, and have a stable, predictable scale. To achieve this, every aspect of our work on the piccolo comes into play, from our selection and treatment of wood, to the design of our scale and head joints, and even to the selection of our pads. No detail is overlooked. We also offer many options to make life a bit easier, such as the C-sharp trill, the vented C key, the Brasa F-sharp, as well as 4 head joint styles with a range of material combinations. By the way, our head joints are generally available immediately and are a great way to breathe new life into an older piccolo. To learn more about Keefe piccolos, check our website, send a message, or give us a call.
And to be fair, I know she is like she does Orford and she teaches at a lot of places and does a lot of really cool things around there. But I think even if you can find some recordings of her playing, like I know she just did the Vivaldi Piccolo Concerto last year, 2 years ago. And I'm sure she'll tell you, or if she already has. But I mean, just listening to her, listening to that sound. And one of the things that she did for me too, was like, she would tell me and give me recordings of people and say, go listen to this, go see how they do this. And so she sort of gave me that lineage too, of like, this is a good sound. This is how you sculpt these things. So I did a lot of listening when I worked with her, because it was just, and that's the thing I loved about her too, is that she was just opening the door to so many other piccolo players, so many other people, so many other ways of doing things. It wasn't just like my way or no way, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm that type of person. Like I want to hear why it works for you and why it works for this other person, maybe why it doesn't work for you. So it's good to be able to explore all those sounds and colors and musical options.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. Cool. So because you are the piccolo player of the San Diego Symphony, do you want to talk about your colleagues within the flute section? What is that dynamic like?
Oh my gosh. I feel so lucky because Rose and Sarah are like two of the most incredible, like kind, sweet-hearted, and also like amazing musicians. I've only been there for, well, it would be 2 years, but we haven't really played. So I've only been there for a year before all this happened. But I mean, they're so gracious and sweet. And I mean, Sarah and Rose also, like from a, flute blending place, first, second flute. I mean, they just sound amazing together. And Rose is like an incredible surfer. And so Rose had been actually right before the pandemic had just started teaching me how to surf. And so I was loving that as like after rehearsal, before rehearsal, we'd be out surfing. And that was really a lot of fun. But yeah, I miss them. And I'm really excited for this all to be over so that we can like sit down and play together again. Cause I think they're just incredible people. And I could not ask for a better section. They're amazing.
Oh, how cool. I'm kind of jealous that you are super courageous to get on a surfboard.
Well, I mean, it's funny, like courageous. I mean, like most of my time is spent falling off of the board.
Okay.
But, it's like, but it is like one of those times, like, the time or two where I got up and I was like, yes, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And so then it's like the adrenaline thing, then you're like, well, I want to do that again, even if it means falling off 20 times. So it is hard work though. It's a workout for sure, but I was loving it. It was really fun.
Yeah, it looks like an activity that I would really love, but at the same time would be afraid of like smashing my head against, the ocean's floor or something, or some kind of wave, coming down on you. I don't know.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of dangerous. Maybe I have the wrong perception.
I will say like Rose helped me out a lot because, she's an expert. And so she has like this hard small board that she uses out there, which I would not be surfing on. But she helped me pick out this foam board that like when it falls on you, it feels like nothing.
Okay.
So
okay.
I have been smacked in the head a few times, but because it's a foam board, it doesn't feel like you're getting hit. So, but I mean, for me, it was just something exciting and new. And I like learning and I like challenges. So it was also good for like the breathing and the upper body and like a lot of sort of the same muscles you have to use in the flute is like a lot of core. So yeah, it was very cool. I can't wait to get back.
That is so cool. I was going to say core strength, I would think would have to be there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yoga, anything you do in yoga, there's a lot of like yoga poses that you do on the surfboard. So you're really building a lot of like your back muscles and your, any upper torso, arms, everything. You're really strengthening core for sure while you're like trying to stabilize yourself on a board.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should do it. Go for it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to put on my big girl pants and be like, Amy Taylor said to go and try this. So I am.
Yeah. Come visit San Diego. Rose and I will take you out.
As long as the board was foam and it was padded in rubber, Oh, shoot. Yeah. No, I have to chuckle because one of my very first teachers, Dr. Boyd, would say, go, run around the building 5 times, come up, pick up your flute, and then play. And so now instead of that, you'll have to tell your students, go on the surfboard for 10, 20 minutes and then pick up your flute and play.
Yeah. Well, I will also say even just hiking to the ocean with your surfboard is an exercise. So, like bring your flute, bring your surfboard, put the surfboard down, try to play. You're already out of breath. You'll be fine. So.
Oh, shoot. Well, I have no hope then because, oh, man. No, I love it. That's so cool that you found a great hobby.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's very exciting.
Cool. So going back to you playing with this wonderful section, what do you get super giddy about in terms of repertoire when you get to play with the orchestra?
Oh, yeah. Anything Shostakovich or Tchaikovsky. I mean, I think it's like Shostakovich is super challenging no matter what symphony, but I feel like there's just these moments of like such intensity. And then also you have these movements and these, very vulnerable, sensitive piccolo solos. And yeah, I think I get really excited when we play Shostakovich because it's also that the piccolo writing is just insane, like, up in the stratosphere, sort of on top of everybody, soaring on top of the orchestra. And then you have these like really pianissimo, soft legato lines. And I don't know, it always gives me goosebumps playing Shostakovich. But Tchaikovsky also, even though there is some really great stuff for piccolo, like also the parts where you're sitting there, like inside the orchestra sound for me is some of the best time. Because even if I'm sitting waiting for the third movement of a symphony, I just find myself sort of engulfed in the sound. And so for me, it's those pieces I just love.
I love that answer. I hadn't thought about the errata. Like you're not playing in that movement, but you just get to sit there in the midst of the orchestra and listen on stage while they're playing around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know
it's
that sounds,
special.
I know that sounds like obvious. I mean, obviously you're sitting there and listening, but you actually get to just experience that music. Yeah. You're taking it in.
Yeah.
Huh. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, and especially like, in some of those symphonies where you don't have to count rests. You just have movements where you're sitting there, you can really just sort of zen out.
Yeah.
You can focus on your breath or you can just like let the sound wash over you. It's, I don't know, for me, it's really incredible experience. So.
No, I love that answer. So cool. So I know there aren't tons out there. There are more out there now than there were, 20 years ago. What piccolo method books do you use within your studio?
Well, I mean, you mentioned it already. I mean, I use the Mazzanti method for sure. One of my favorites that I've been using for a long time is the Patricia Morris, the Piccolo Study Book. I mean, I do that every day when I'm warming up myself. But I think there's just a wide variety of tone and expression exercises. And I feel like it's less like an etude and more sort of like you're just diving into your sound. So I really like that one. And then I also use Walfrid Cujalo's book, The Articulate Flutist, and I just sort of use some of the same exercises for piccolo, just because I think sometimes on piccolo, we assume it's just like the flute.
Yeah.
And it's not. So I try to find, because the articulation has to be different and the way we approach sounds and intervals has to be different. And so I try to incorporate some of the articulation exercises that Mr. Cujalo uses and try to apply it to the piccolo just for difference, just so that you see the comparison and the contrast.
Very cool. So speaking of repertoire, is there any repertoire piece, solos or chamber or whatever that comes up frequently within your studio?
Well, I mean, of course, I think for the piccolo, there's always the Persichetti, the Parable, there's the Lieberman, and then Vivaldi Piccolo Concerto. I think that comes up a lot. But for me, one of the things that I have my students do just to work on sound and interpretation and vibrato, I do a lot of Bach sonatas and the Telemann fantasies. I know they're not written for piccolo, but I think there's so much richness in the writing of those pieces and also like, again, the reason we teach those pieces sometimes is we're working on articulation, we're working on sound and intonation and maybe vibrato or or musical line and phrasing. So I use them on the piccolo too, just because a lot of flutists have already worked on some of these pieces. So it helps to feel how it's different on the piccolo and sort of hear how you have to resonate slightly differently and how you have to approach vibrato differently. So I do a lot of Telemann and Bach in my studio.
I like that notion of, hey, most flutists know the 6 Bach sonatas. Right. So if this repertoire is familiar, to them, how much easier will it be when they put it to piccolo?
Right. Well, and it's different. It's challenging in a different way because you are adjusting and sort of manipulating the sound in a different way than on the flute. And you have to sort of have that care and attention to like intonation, and the intervals are different, and sort of working out those persnickety moments. I think it's really helpful just for the body, and the ear to sort of retrain a little bit.
That's a good point. So now we're going down this rabbit hole from orchestral repertoire to to piccolo, very specific like solo piccolo pieces, and now into I'm going to do air quote alternate fingerings. I know how some flutists feel or don't feel about using that word alternate. Yeah. So what is an alternate air quote fingering for piccolo that you use quite frequently?
It's funny because I don't use a whole lot of alternates on piccolo, not because there aren't great ones out there, but I think it was never part of my training. And I worked the best I could to make myself in tune or, figure out tricks for myself. But the one that I use, and I probably use it a little too much, is the alternate C sharp, where it's 2-3 on the left hand and 2-3 on the right with pinky. Okay. And it just helps, it helps bring up the pitch. And I use that a lot in the second octave. Okay. But I can't really even think of another one that I use. I mean, that's a biggie for me. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. I know that seems like such a microscopic question, but whenever I do these talks, I always imagine what is it like in Amy Taylor's studio? Or what's on her stand? What are those pencil markings? So as much as I can bring, your life through the microphones here and through the headsets, it's just more fun for me.
Yeah. Well, I will say, just to give you a little background, you mentioned what's on my stand. It's like, if people saw my music, I'm a scribbler. I write all over my music. And I have notes like up, down, go forward, pull back. I write down a lot of cues in my part, so that I know who I'm playing with, if it's the bassoon or the trumpet or whatever, I know where I'm going and who I'm with. But I'll say a lot of my markings sort of are because, sort of like what I mentioned at the beginning, I had to sort of work really hard at the beginning of my flute playing life. Mm-hmm. I started sort of late. And so I was playing catch up with a lot of stuff. And a lot of what I ended up doing was sort of playing by ear and not actually knowing how to read rhythms or knowing, what fingers I was using. It was just sort of I figured it out based on what I heard from other people. And as a result, I just got used to sort of writing everything in my part. And I think over preparing and over listening and and I really had to sort of dive into the mechanics of things and rhythms and all those things. So it's just, I write a lot, or I not as much now, but in my older parts, they're just scribbled all over.
I'm a scribbler too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mostly because I'm such a visual person. And I've had to kind of get away from that just a little bit these past 2 years, because I've noticed that the music is already the black and white on the page is already so restrictive to me, because again, I can get into that zone of just the notation and what it looks like and not being in the moment of actually listening.
Right.
So removing myself from that has been a process.
Well, no, I get that, because sometimes if you plan, if you have so much in there, I get it that it's restrictive, that it feels like the plan becomes the thing and then you don't have any room for change.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a balance there for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. When you say that you had a late start and you had to catch up, I had to laugh because I'm thinking over here, you caught up pretty good. You're the piccolo player of the San Diego Symphony. Not too shabby.
Well, okay. So, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. When I'm going to make this as short as I can because this could be a very long story. When I was 8, I got really sick and I had a strep infection, not strep throat, but a strep infection that went undiagnosed. And it wasn't for lack of my mom trying. Like we went to hospitals and doctors and nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And so it turns out that basically the strep got so out of control that it ended up eating away at 3 of my heart valves. And you only have 4.
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
luckily, like just in the nick of time, we found a doctor and the doctor was like, okay, she has what's called rheumatic fever and she's in endocarditis, which means like the body's basically shutting down because it can't work anymore. And so luckily it was like, the doctor was like, if you're not in the hospital in 24 hours, she's not going to be alive anymore. And so my mom took me to the hospital. And from there, so that's when I was in 3rd grade. And from there, I was bedridden for the good part of a year. I had to be homeschooled because I couldn't get out of bed. And they were basically waiting for like my body to recover. And the doctors gave me a little while, they waited until I was in high school to figure out if like the heart would sort of reconstruct itself. Because sometimes it does when you're younger, sometimes the body can sort of regenerate a little better than when you're older. But when I got to be a junior in high school, they said, you know what, you're not getting any better and things are getting harder for you. So we need to have surgery. And so it was at that point, like I had been playing flute, but definitely not necessarily seriously. And I had just found Claire and Helen and was just starting to feel like I was understanding things. And so I had to go have the surgery. And the crazy part of this is that the surgery that I needed because of what had happened, there was one doctor at Children's Hospital in Dallas that had done the procedure once. There was a doctor in France that had done it. And there was a doctor in Oklahoma City who was basically like the father of this procedure.
Oh my gosh.
And so my mom, we drove up to Oklahoma City and I had open heart surgery. And it was basically when I was recovering in the hospital, I remember being in the bed and just like, all I wanted to do was play my flute. All I wanted to do was listen to James Galway. And I didn't have any of that there. And of course, like I had heart surgery, like I'm not gonna be able to play my flute. Yeah. And so a friend of mine from high school, like drove up on the weekend and brought me my flute and brought me out like the stack of CDs. And because we listened to CDs then, and I put on my CD player and I was like, just in the hospital bed, like I had my flute out. I was sort of just fingering along with the Mozart concerto and with James Galway playing. And I mean, it was that moment. It was like that light bulb of like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what makes me happy. And so as soon as I was healthy enough to start, which was again, like sort of at the beginning of my senior year, I like practiced as much as I could and tried to like get myself ready for college auditions within that very short window of time. So that's what I mean by catch up. Like it was a lot of like interruptions health-wise that prevented me from getting there, but also it was the health issue that showed me my path, I guess. So, and I was also lucky that I had Claire and Helen sort of really kicking my butt and, helping me to sort of get me ready. And then, like I said earlier, I was really, really, really lucky that Professor Sundberg sort of saw a spark in there somewhere and took a chance on me because I was pretty rough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amy, that is such an incredible story.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like, I'm so sad at one point for you that you had to go through something so harsh and traumatic. So on one side of this, I empathize. I'm like, oh my gosh, you had to go through this horrible ordeal. You almost lost your life. But at the same time, here's your silver lining. You're laying in bed and playing with James Galway through the CD, and you realize this is what I want to do. And it makes you wonder, like, would you have had that very clear defining moment if you weren't laying in the hospital bed?
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe not. We don't know. But it's amazing to see how it unfolded for you.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I definitely think about that a lot because I know that, even now in these like sort of difficult times and, life seems so uncertain. I really think about that time in my life where I just, it was out of something really awful, that something positive came for me. Like it was a really like clear shift and a clear picture of like what I wanted for myself. And I think about that even when I feel even now, like things are so uncertain and I worry about classical music or I worry about my students or my peers or whatever it might be. And I just have to know that like, and positive things come of these dark times. And I definitely, I use the adversity to my advantage when I can.
Yeah.
If I can.
Yeah, for sure. You said that so well. And I want to highlight this little nugget that you just gave and how you reflect on this time or that time when you were younger, Amy, going through those health complications and how you're pulling from your past and saying, okay, Corona looks a little different than my heart surgery, but pretty much it's a wave that we have to ride. It's something that's happening. Okay, from my past experience, this wasn't a piece of cake, but that adversity taught me X, Y, Z. I was able to overcome it. It wasn't ideal, but here I am. And same thing now, and you can apply it to this season.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's something in that too, just knowing like every time you come up to the proverbial cliff, and you don't fall off. I mean, every time that you have the strength and you can choose to like, maybe you do something for yourself. Maybe you do something for your community. Maybe you change your ideas of what you thought you were going to do or who you were going to be. And I think that those moments in our lives are important. And even if it's just to take a moment and observe the fact that you are having a difficult time and you are, things aren't the way that you want them to be, but how can you make a change for the good? How can you do something that's going to help you? Or how are you going to change who you are and how you interact in the world? I think it's important. And I think it's good to remember those tough times for that reason, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And even though if life doesn't give you, or if you're not where you wanted to be, said per season or whatever, and it takes you a different path, I always, at first, like for me, I throw a fit. I'm like, this is not what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I sulk for a little bit. And then at some point I'm like, all right, this is stupid. It's a waste of my time. What can I do? And I'm piggybacking off of what you just said so beautifully. And the notion that I want to offer too is it always takes me to a place that was better than I had anticipated.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You fight it at the beginning. You're like, no. And you throw your fists up to the air and say, this is not what I want. But then once things calm down, you start working and reevaluating and figuring out what this new whatever is, and then when you're in the midst of it or whatever, and you look back on it, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't plan that, but I'm so glad it unfolded that way because what a major blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same way a lot of times. I've taken a lot of auditions, and I feel like over the course of taking auditions, I've had some that went my way and some that didn't. And the ones that didn't, some of them I was like particularly devastated. And then, but now that I look back, I'm like, holy moly, if that had gone another way, like I wouldn't have been here. I wouldn't have met that person. I wouldn't have had this experience. So it's like everything, even though, like you said at the time, it might be just completely like, crying and, pulling yourself up. Everything for me, I look back and I'm so grateful for those experiences now because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't, it's like everything is where it's supposed to be. So
yeah, I totally agree. And I love that. So speaking of younger Amy, I don't know how young you want to go here, but if there's one piece of advice that you could offer her, what would it be?
Oh, that's super easy. I would say just to be kinder to myself. I think I got in my way a lot when I was younger, and especially like I mentioned, I mean, just starting that flute journey at UNT and even in high school, I feel like I was so super hard on myself and just beat myself up over, just not being good enough. And I think that having that little self-care, would have helped me a lot because I think I defeated myself a lot before I even gave myself the chance. And to just look back now and say like, it's going to be fine. Just, keep going. You're doing fine. You're doing everything you can do. I think that would be a huge, a huge change.
No, I love that. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being vulnerable by me asking a personal question.
No, of course. I love it.
Yeah. Cool.
I think that's how I don't know. I tend to gravitate towards this type of conversation, where it's real and it's not, like people saying, "Oh, I love auditions. Why don't you?" I mean, so I think that I think we all learn from hearing, how we all feel. Like it's not, we chose to be in careers and professions that are not the easiest. And there's a lot of rejection and there's a lot of sort of being hard on ourselves and not being kind.
Yeah.
And so I think that just like knowing that other people are sort of feeling the same way or have dealt with the same confidence issues, I think it helps just as a community.
Yeah, for sure. You're right. And these talks can be, there's nothing wrong with interviews being stuffy. If somebody wanted to have a stuffy interview, that's fine. But
you learn from those too.
Yeah, you do. But I resonate with you too in having these, personal, intimate talks because that's life. And let's be real here because, we're all in this together and we have different stories, but the underlining themes keep coming up, hardship, whether it's in the form of a heart surgery or having a hairline fracture on your L5 vertebrae or having cancer or the list can go on and on,
Right.
But just being real with it and authentic about your journey, I think is wonderful. So I thank you for that.
Yeah.
Are there any last sentiments that you would like to offer?
Oh my gosh. Well, no, I'm just so grateful that you asked me to do this and to be able to chat with you. Yeah. I think for any flute player out there who's, doubting their piccolo capabilities, like reach out to somebody that, that plays piccolo and play for them and get their opinion. Cause I think we are very hard on ourselves. And I think it's just helpful to have that second opinion. And it might just be that confidence boost you need to put you on a piccolo path.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. So I do a fun segment at the end of the show called Picks. Do you have a pick for the listeners today?
Yes. My favorite book, and I make all of my students read this book, is Daring Greatly by Brené Brown.
Okay.
It's for sure like super worth reading. It's amazing. It's about like what we've been talking about, sort of being vulnerable, putting yourself in the arena, being fearless.
Yeah, amazing. I have heard of the title. I have not read it, but I will put it on my wish list for sure now.
Yeah. And she also has another one so maybe two picks. She has another one called The Gifts of Imperfection, which is also really incredible. But Daring Greatly is, for me, it really changed my mind about how I talk to myself and a lot of those things. So I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Great picks. So one of my picks today, actually, I did not plan this. I did not know about your health issues when you were younger. So this is amazing how I get to make this connection. But I just came across recently this nonprofit organization called Chase the Music. It is based out in Colorado. And Clark Hodge is one of the main go-to people for the organization. And basically, what this group does is connect composers, performers alike to children or to adults who are dealing with an illness or with cancer or with some tragic health issue. And during these times, like you, laying in the hospital bed, listening to James Galway, music can provide hope and healing during those tragic times. And so what Clark has done is asked for composers to get to know this child on an intimate level, find out his or her favorite, toys or colors or stories, and then compose a piece for him or her. So that way, when they are away from their family or they are laying in the hospital bed, they can play this composition that was written just for them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I just love it how your story and this pick totally tied everything together.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, how special.
Yeah. And so, this is kind of like a public announcement. I have not asked Clark, about this at all, but I'm sure he would be grateful for any composer or performer who was interested in participating to perhaps reach out to him. I don't know how much he's able to do now during COVID, but if this pulls on your heartstrings, in any way, perhaps this is an organization that you can be a part of. I do know that they collect donations, of course, to help with everything, but this was just a very meaningful group of wonderful people that recently came into my life. And I was like, whoa, why had I not heard of you guys before, Yeah. So I just wanted to bring awareness to Chase the Music.
That's amazing. I love it. That's great.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to bring 360 listeners' attention to, not to sound like Vanna White over here, but there are some great Flute 360 codes going on right now for special discounts with Flute Specialists, Flutistry Boston, and the Carolyn Nesbaum Music Company. So I won't rattle it all off, but I will put everything in the show note links so that way you can check it out. But those are my 4 picks for today.
Awesome.
Yeah. So since we're speaking of piccolo and all of that, you can get your piccolo music, piccolo cleaning supplies. It's all good.
Perfect. I actually bought my very first piccolo from Carolyn Nussbaum, so I'll give her a shout out.
There you go. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for your time, talents, and expertise. I just loved hearing your story. I'm glad that we got to reconnect, and thank you for carving out time for us.
Oh my gosh, really, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Johnson at Flute Specialists. Flute Specialists is excited to sponsor Dr. Begay and Flute 360 podcast Piccolo series. We sure do love piccoloists, flutists, and low flute players. Flute Specialists has one of the largest inventories of new handmade flutes, pre-professional intermediate level instruments, head joints, piccolos, and low flutes. We also have a large inventory of previously owned flutes, piccolos, low flutes, and head joints as well. As a nationally known sales, repair, music, and accessory company, we have competitive pricing, excellent warranties for purchases and repairs. We also include for free, at no extra charge, instrument warranty for adjustments and lifetime discounts on all future repairs. We have a great teacher program assisting teachers, players, and families find the right instrument. We also have a number of virtual lectures and master classes for studios and private lesson instructors. Our Flute Specialist team looks forward to hearing from you and assisting you any way possible. We can send you flutes, piccolos, head joints for in-home trials as well. Do visit our flutespecialist.com website and our Flute Specialist Instagram and Facebook pages to keep up to date with all the fun contests and giveaways. We do look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Flute 360 podcast. Please subscribe to the Flute 360 newsletter by going to HeidiKBegay.com. A pop-up will appear and you can enter in your information for the weekly newsletter. The newsletter includes great incentives, updates, and perks to the subscribers. Go ahead to HeidiKBegay.com and sign up today. Thank you. Let's talk about flute.